All right, we are live.
Hey.
Hi. All right. So for people joining us live today, my name is Winnie Bienemy. I am a licensed professional counselor. And joining me today to kickstart our mental health awareness series is Ulrich Axime. He is a licensed clinical social worker, and today we're going to be talking about men's mental health. I am super, super stoked about this conversation that we're about to have. So, Ulrich, introduce yourself to our viewers and let us know a little bit about who you are, what you do, who you see, and a little bit about your practice, and then we'll dive into the conversation.
Awesome, awesome. Again, my name is Yorick J. Oxime. I am a licensed clinical social worker out of South Florida. I work primarily with adult males with anxiety and depression. I have been in private practice since 2019. The practice is thriving, it's doing great.
Awesome.
I began in the field in 2014 after graduating with my master's and have been loving it ever since and truly just love my practice and everything that I've been able to do within the community.
That's awesome. That is so amazing to hear. And before we came on the live video, I was sharing a little bit with you about how hard it is to find male therapists. And so um, I am just really looking forward to this topic that we're discussing, men's mental health, and talking about some of the reasons why men may not seek therapy and all these different things. So, for people watching, if you have any questions, comments, or anything that you'd like to share, feel free to drop them in the comments. We love it when you engage with us, so feel free to do that. So, um, in your practice, you focus primarily on men struggling with anxiety and depression.
Mhm.
Um, Tell me a little bit more about why you feel like more men or men in general don't seek therapy.
Oh, there's a number of different reasons. Some reasons that I found was the stigma of it, the whole concept of vulnerability.
Hmm.
So, for men in society, at least on the Western side of the world,
Yeah.
where we live, vulnerability, being soft, being in a place where you're not dominant and in control,
Hmm.
rough and tough, is looked down upon when you're not any of those things that I
Yeah.
mentioned before. So, therapy and seeking out help seems like you're weak. There's something wrong with you. You're defective.
Hmm.
So individuals don't want to feel like they're becoming an inefficient leader in their own
Yeah.
lives and therefore inefficient leaders in the lives of others around them. So they see themselves more as protectors. So
Hmm.
if you're the protector, why do you need to be protected or
Yeah.
be spoken to someone else, speaking to someone else about some of the challenges that you have?
Yeah.
So another thing that I see is a lack of social support. I forget the figure exactly, but I read somewhere where after the age of 25, there's a steep drop off in terms of friendships. So
Really?
you go from middle school, high
Hmm.
school, and then college. Of course, the high school to college, you're gonna have the drop off. It
Right.
happens, right? And then you graduate, you make new friends and stuff like that in college. And then after that, you graduate, you have the
Hmm.
real time job, you get into serious relationships, you
Hmm.
might have moved to a new city or a new place. And as you're making those life transitions, you're losing more and more individuals. So I
Hmm.
think for men in the way that they socialize in some sense, typically it doesn't breed to maintaining in contact with individuals for a long period of time and doing some of those extra things that we need to do to keep
Hmm.
the friendships and social contacts intact.
Yeah, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And you mentioned earlier the stigma with, men seeking help and men asking for help. And that really made me think about um, a person's upbringing and thinking
Mhm.
about how boys are raised in terms of, you have to be tough and
Yeah.
you can't show emotions and all these different things. Um, for the men who are seeking your services and who are coming to therapy, that must take a lot of courage and a lot of bravery for them to sort of, put down that armor and take off that mask and be vulnerable and say, you know what, I'm struggling. I need this help.
Yeah, yeah. We have to change the narrative
Hmm.
around the idea of vulnerability, I feel, as well.
Hmm.
One of the things that I try to impart to the people that I work with is that vulnerability is actually strength. Here
Yeah.
I am, nothing up my sleeves, take me
Yeah.
as I am.
Yeah.
Uh, I'm sharing something with you that I don't get to share with everyone. It
Right.
is a gift. So what I also teach is with that gift that not everyone is equipped to handle that gift.
Mhm.
I make a
Mhm.
joke about my wife is probably watching. I got her a Apple Watch one year and she didn't wear it almost until New Year's and I wanted her to wear it like now, right? Uh, like yesterday, as soon as I got it for her. But with gifts, that person has to utilize it and make use of it in the way that
Mhm.
they feel that they want to.
Mhm.
And with that vulnerability, they may not use it correctly. That person that you might be vulnerable with may not use it correctly, but it shouldn't say this is the last time that I'm getting
Yeah.
giving you that gift or another person that gift. You may not be
Mhm.
deserving of that gift, and that's okay.
Yeah.
It is a gift for you as well, right? Like you get to get something out of it if it's given to the right person. This is the way
Mhm.
that I sort of look at vulnerability.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, I really like that analogy that you just used, and I really like that. Um,
I don't think my
so
wife
what?
enjoys it too much, but
Hey, very useful.
yeah.
So when we talk about men struggling with anxiety and depression, what are some of the differences that you have noticed in terms of how men present with these symptoms versus, say, how a woman might present with these symptoms?
Uh, so for the men that I work with, a lot of times it presents as anger and irritability. There's an aggression. There's a inability to
Hmm.
be more in the rational sense in terms of their emotions. They're
Hmm.
impulsive, so they get
Hmm.
into impulsive behaviors that they normally wouldn't get into. Uh,
Hmm.
and not to say that women can't do the same thing, but those are the things that I notice more
Hmm.
so in the men that I work with. I also see isolation and substance use. There is individuals that can't go more than 3 hours without sparking a blunt, going
Hmm.
for a drink, gambling, or any of those different things. And then also the isolation. They don't talk to
Hmm.
nobody, they don't seek anyone out, they don't interact with anyone.
Hmm.
They may work, they may eat and keep to themselves. And it's just
Hmm.
that every single day. Work, eat,
Hmm.
keep to themselves. Work, eat, keep to
Hmm.
themselves. Over and over. And it's like, when was the last time you spoke to a family member? When was the last
Hmm.
time you spoke to a friend? When was the last time you spoke to a professional, any
Yeah.
professional, for
Yeah.
that matter? And the outside world does not exist. So
Hmm.
they're dealing with depressive symptoms
Yeah.
from the outside looking in.
Yeah. Sounds like a lot of avoidance as well, because I'm
Mhm.
thinking of when we look at women, usually like we can easily say, I feel sad, or I'm not feeling like myself today, or just talking about these feelings and emotions that a lot of women can more easily talk about. But it sounds like for men, especially when we look at how boys are raised and
Mhm.
the stigma and this whole thing about, hey, you got to be strong, you got to be the man, you got to man up, you can't cry, and you have to hold all of these emotions inside. It makes sense to me why um, a lot of men might present with these symptoms in those ways.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
Tell me about some of the risk factors um, that you've noticed in terms of uh, the men that you work with or the populations that you work with. Some risk factors that men listening should be aware
Yeah. So substance use, which I just discussed,
of. Hmm.
it puts you in a place where you're not truly yourself, right? It is a mood and mind altering substance
Hmm.
that it's altering your normal state. So that can be a risk factor. Individuals who have experienced any sort of abuse.
Hmm.
The one abuse that sticks out to me primarily is sexual abuse in the male community, which is
And that's
very
something that's not talked about a lot.
very taboo. And
Hmm.
not to say that it's okay for anyone, but I think it does something different to
Yeah.
men, to some degree. And it's the way that we socialize and discuss these things.
Hmm.
So, unfortunately, from what I've seen in growing up and things of that nature, whether it be female cousins or female friends, like, hey, don't do this because you may be sexually assaulted. But that's not really ingrained and taught to boys. So it's
Hmm.
like, no, that doesn't happen
Hmm.
to boys. That doesn't happen to
Hmm.
men. So to go through that,
Hmm.
I would say puts men in a very precarious situation. It
Yeah.
puts them in a very dangerous situation. Um, eh, Being involved in that and a very big factor. And then to go with the other abuse, physical, emotional abuse.
Mm.
Growing up, you may have the way that a person was disciplined. Don't get your little dumb blah 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 up here right now. You think those are just words, but those words they start to seep in and stay
Mhm.
there and become something out there in the person's life and
Mhm.
affects them in a way that's very hurtful. But again, we can't talk about it. It's not
Yeah.
a whatever, right? I've seen it too where individuals will have children of different sexes, right? You have a boy, you have a girl, a couple boys, and the way that they're disciplined, right? You know,
Different.
we'll talk about corporal punishment and all that, right? I've seen it where the boys will, in terms of physical punishment, will
Mhm.
turn up a notch because they're boys. You know, they could take a knocking or two. But again, that becomes a risk factor. That becomes dangerous.
Mhm.
That leads to the aggression and irritability that we talk about and lack of communication in other
Mhm.
areas.
Mhm.
Things such as job loss, um, the person's vocation, like what they do,
Mhm.
who they are,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
How many times have you been to a party, Winnie, and it's just like, what do you do,
Yeah.
right? What's your name? What do
Where do
you
you
do?
work at? Where do you work at?
Work at. And I'm like, dang, all right, well, ask me who I am, right? So
Mhm.
I think maybe for guys more so, it is attached to who they are.
Mhm.
What they do is attached to who they are. So they lose
Mhm.
that, then what am I?
Yeah.
And that leaves space for things that are just not great sometimes.
Mhm. Mhm.
Financial issues can be a risk factor, right?
Mhm.
Gotta earn that bread. You gotta bring that bacon, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So the love isn't always unconditional, right? There are some conditions in families at times. So if you're not bringing in money, then what good are you?
Mhm.
Hmm. And that becomes an issue and a risk factor for some of these individuals.
Mm-hmm.
Unresolved loss and grief.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
Where life is about loss. We're constantly losing things. We're constantly grieving, but not being able to process that and even recognize it
Yeah.
becomes a problem.
Yeah.
Um, Other unresolved traumas. So I grew up. People have died.
Yeah.
People have been locked up. Um, Breakups.
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
it's tough. It's tough.
Yeah.
And
It's a
then
lot.
the last risk factor, to piggyback off the breakups, is breakups and divorces.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I don't think we often talk about how men take some of those breakups, whether it be a girlfriend or a partner or a marriage that
Mm-hmm.
person um, lost, and that becomes a major issue for
Mm-hmm.
some of the gentlemen that I work with. So these
Mm-hmm.
are all the risk factors. I'm sure there's more, but those are some risk factors that come to mind for me.
Yeah, those were really great. And speaking of breakups and relationships and whatnot, how would you say that, or what are some of the tips that you can think of that you can give to perhaps a partner who's noticing that um, her her spouse, her boyfriend, um, her husband is struggling with some of these things? What are some things that they can do to help this person?
Um,
And
mhm.
And to add like an additional question to that, what effect do you feel like these unspoken issues or unaddressed issues can have on a relationship?
Okay. So first, in terms of a spouse or a partner, um, being helpful to a person who's going through what may seem like a mental health challenge,
Mm-hmm.
I would say hold the space for that person to speak about it. Ask how they're doing. You can ask
Mm-hmm.
one or a million times. And maybe that millionth time that they're ready to then speak about it. And that's all that you can do. Uh, Provide resources if you
Mm-hmm.
feel that you're up to. It's not your responsibility,
Mm-hmm.
but if you feel inclined to, you can discuss resources.
Mm-hmm.
And most importantly, again, be supportive.
Yeah.
So I've worked with individuals. My wife sent me, "Oh, he need to go to therapy." No, you don't just cast us aside and
Mm-hmm.
you go talk to somebody. Like, no, maybe they want to talk to you.
Mm-hmm.
And then it gets to a point, of course, you have to have your boundaries. Like, you know what, this may be out of my depth.
Mm-hmm.
And the conversation about therapy or another professional, a support group, might come up,
Mm-hmm.
but it shouldn't just be, well, I don't want to hear what you got to talk about. Go to therapy or talk to
Mm-hmm.
somebody else. If you have friends, just hold that space.
Mm-hmm.
Make it seem, and not make it seem, make it so that it is safe to
Mm-hmm.
discuss the areas of vulnerability within that person,
Mm-hmm.
and that person may be willing to open up.
Yeah. I have a question or maybe a comment just to kind of piggyback
Mhm.
here. So you mentioned, holding the space for that partner and asking them, how they're doing and everything like that. Where um, should people draw the line in terms of asking because you genuinely want to know how the other person is doing versus nagging, right? Because that's
Mhm.
something that I hear a lot from clients, from women who are struggling with the communication piece with their male partner in terms of trying to hold that space and trying to understand, but the partner isolates, they shut down, like you mentioned before. So where
Mhm.
should they draw that line at? Okay, I'm asking, I'm going to keep asking and keep holding that space for you, but when does it become nagging?
You have to communicate about it.
Mm-hmm.
Is what I would say. So make it be known, hey, I'm asking because I'm noticing these particular things, and I may be wrong, but this is what I'm seeing from
Mm-hmm.
the outside looking at it. And sometimes we need an outside person to make us
Mm-hmm.
aware of our behaviors. And if that's not the case, and say, okay, so if that becomes an area where you want to discuss that, just know that it's the offer is still there.
Mm-hmm.
But moving forward, I think it is best if I stop.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I would always tell people to watch your boundaries. How how full is your cup? So
Mm-hmm.
if you're dry and you're still asking, you're still putting the effort out there, and that person keeps pushing you away, you have to find a way to refill your cup, and you may need to take a pause or just simply
Yeah.
take take a couple steps back,
Mm-hmm.
essentially, from that whole situation, and allow that person to be for a little bit. And of
Mm-hmm.
course, keep your eye out for dangerous things that that person is sort of headed to, and then take it from that point. So if you stay hitting that gas, you're gonna end up in a place of burnout. You're gonna end up in
Mm-hmm.
a place of nagging. But if you pace yourself out, hey, I asked, no, hey, I asked, no,
Mm-hmm.
hey, I asked because,
Mm-hmm.
okay, and that person
Still
doesn't
nothing.
accept, I think it's a good time to kind of take a step back and just refill your cup a
Mm-hmm.
bit.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Good tips. Very good tips. Um, and then I think I wanted to touch a little bit more on um, how men deal with breakups and divorces and everything like that, because
Mhm.
I think you're right that we don't really talk about that a lot. We don't focus so much on how men deal with that. Um, what have you seen in terms of that?
What have I seen?
Yeah, what have you seen?
Ooh, with these relationships, it's what a person has been used to for, in some cases, many years, right? A place that they could come to and call home
Hmm.
with a person. And with that relationship, other things that come with it. So it might be after a divorce, you lose your in laws, and your in
Hmm.
laws have been your social support. And people choose sides.
Yeah.
It's something we don't really talk about sometimes, and when it comes to divorces, and it's like, I'm team this person, and then they
Hmm.
go along with that. In some cases, you lose friends as a result of that. A lot of them may have been her friends,
Right.
and you came into contact, and they became your friends, but like the OG friends were with her. And all right, cool. They may not know all the details of the divorce or whatever, but they might side and go with that person, and
Hmm.
um, in comes the isolation. Another factor within that is children sometimes, right? And men's rights when it comes to divorces and custody
Hmm.
of those children. So I've worked with individuals. These men are given maybe 1 or 2 weekends out of a month,
Mm.
and are expected to pay child support a certain amount in some cases. And I'm sure that's very controversial. We have stories of, you know, $10,000 a month for my hairdo and other things, right? But in everyday life, some of that stuff is backbreaking for
Hmm.
some individuals if their
Hmm.
divorce did not go in the way that it may needed to go. So individuals, in some cases, are even though they're court ordered to see their children or allowed to see their children once or twice a month, it's not being enforced. So they can go months and years without interacting with their children. That does something to those individual psyches and their whole situation. It's tough for these
Yeah.
individuals to, and we're talking about divorce.
Yeah.
And some of this stuff applies to relationships, uh, to boyfriend, boyfriend. Like you can
Hmm.
do a lot of those things
Yeah.
as well. Maybe it
Hmm.
won't cost you as much, but the pain
Yeah.
is probably very similar, if not the same.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. What would you say are some of the common mental health conditions in men that you have noticed or that you've worked with or um, that you've heard, clients and their families talk about?
First, depression. Depression's a killer.
Hmm.
Um, so let's not forget that. Substance abuse, PTSD slash anxiety are some of the common mental health conditions in men.
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. And then we're getting close to wrapping up. I want to wrap up by talking about some of the resources and treatments and things like that that are available to people. So, um, again, I'm gonna say how hard it is to find a male therapist, and so I know that for a lot of men who are seeking services, had this experience where people will reach out and ask if I have a male therapist that they can see or someone that I can recommend and whatnot. And so in general, what sorts of resources do you typically point people to, and where can people go to find some of these resources?
Yeah, so there are support groups that I think are great for men to join, and individual therapy, of course. There's even retreats where men can go camping and
Hmm.
really discuss things that they may not feel comfortable with sharing with their family members or other females in their lives, and get
Hmm.
to the root of solving some ongoing challenges and
Hmm.
seeing themselves as the men that they want to be. Um,
Hmm.
I love some of those retreats that are available, and then even support groups can be right there in your backyard. Something that you go to weekly, bi-weekly, where you're
Hmm.
sitting around with other men who are going through similar
Hmm.
issues. I had a group last year, I want to say, that I opened up for divorced men.
Okay.
Uh, it was a great project. Really tried to get it off the ground, but no one signed up. And I was just like,
Interesting.
huh. Like, and this is a real prevalent issue.
Hmm.
So I'm gonna tweak that and see if that's something I want to do in the future again, and
Hmm.
just change up how it's offered. But yeah, it's
Hmm.
hard enough to, and I kind of understand, hard enough to talk to one person about an
Yeah.
issue. So I'm sitting here with 5 to 8 other guys talking about my
Yeah.
issue. I don't know about that.
Yeah.
Like, am I gonna get along with them?
Yeah. I get that. Yeah.
Uh, so I really want to open that up and tweak it a bit and see if I can
Hmm.
get some guys to join the
Hmm.
support group.
Hmm.
Um, and in terms of how to find some of these things, I would say Psychology Today um, would be a good source in terms of looking at a directory with therapists.
Hmm.
So you can filter it to your needs. The more you hit the filter, the less
Hmm.
clinicians you'll find. So keep that in mind. So they'll be like looking for a biracial clinician, male, within 10 miles radius of me. I was like, yeah, you're gonna have
Yeah.
a hard time finding a person like that.
Yeah, that would be really hard.
Yeah, but they're out there,
Hmm.
and you can find it. So if you want to look for a male therapist and all that, I would definitely say Psychology Today.
Hmm.
Um, You have Beam, which is the Black Emotional and Mental Collective,
Okay.
uh, which is another directory, and it is primarily focused on Black therapy, and you can find therapists there as well, male therapists. I would say your employee assistance programs. So those are built in to the places that you work sometimes. So sometimes we
Hmm.
have benefits and don't fully utilize them.
Yeah.
So maybe speaking to your HR representative and seeing if you have employment assistant programs, or
Hmm.
as we commonly call them, Winnie, EAPs, right?
EAPs.
Um, your insurances, your commercial insurances, may have directories within them. So I get um, my username and all that with my commercial insurance. I'm like, I'll just make appointments, like to show the doctor, like, here, take it. You take this, right? But if you have any of the major insurances, a lot of the times they have like a client portal that you can go to and see what your benefits cover and who the available providers would be
Hmm.
for some of the work that you would like to do.
Hmm.
Uh, Another resource would be ZocDoc, or any app that is very similar to that, where you can just make your appointments almost right then and there. You know, if the person takes your insurance, if you're looking to use insurance. And lastly, Open Path Collective is a good source for individuals who don't have insurance, but also are looking for sliding scale, which
Hmm.
is reduced
Yeah.
therapy prices.
Hmm. All right, awesome. Well, thank you so much for this great conversation and for all of the information and all of the resources. It was such a pleasure having you. We got to do this again.
Yes, definitely. Thank you again for
Yeah.
having me on. Thank you again to the guests. Thank you for complimenting my braids. Dog, friend yet? Okay, friend yet? Okay, cool, cool, cool. Thank you for complimenting the braids. Again, thank you for this platform. You're doing
Yeah.
amazing by doing this series, and I hope to see more clinicians come on and speak to you about various topics. This is
Yeah,
great. It's gonna be an exciting month.
absolutely. Absolutely. So, on that note, we are going to end next week, next Friday, actually. I will be live with another clinician talking about military spouses' mental health and, just talking about all that entails. So, if you're watching this and you want to join us next weekend, next Friday, feel free to join us. And thank you again, Ulrich. We'll do this again soon. Bye, everyone. Bye.